What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into in the world of volleyball, such as Kansas State upsetting number 4 Texas. Who had that on their bingo card? Just an impressive win for those Wildcats, as that is ranked win number 5. And how about Penn State pulling out a big win over number 2 Wisconsin at Rec Hall? The magic happens at Rec Hall as those Nittany Lions needed a big win. Also, how about UCLA pulling off a big win in Pullman against number 9 Washington State? Can those Bruins sneak into the NCAA tournament? Also, we had the CIF Open Division state playoffs happening this past week as Mater Dei continues to mow down the competition, but they ran to a little bit of a snag on Saturday against Huntington Beach. Hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 220 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be live without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on, formerly known as Twitter, X, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. Also, do follow them on Facebook if you still use that. All you just have to do is type in the word IE, Sports, and then Radio in the search bar, like us, and then boom, that's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, which is updated daily for all of your latest sports news, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each podcast, such as this one, Set Point, our community forum, and our merchandise shop. For the past 9 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. And from what I heard is that you get free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Follow Planet Jerky on Instagram at Planet Jerky. And once again, a huge shout out to Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, our sponsor. The jerky that's on a whole other planet. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is by going to X, formerly known as Twitter, at set_point.ie, and then on Instagram at set_point.iesr. You can follow me, Teran Rodriguez, on X, where I'm mainly active, at Teran Rodriguez1, which is kind of 50-50 if you want to. I sometimes post volleyball content, but more times than not, I don't. But with all that said and done, let us begin. As It's Drewski's in the chat room, the host of our Dallas, Texas show, The Heart of Texas Sports. He says, "Good evening, Teran. Have a great show, my guy." And Adam Kark pops in the chat room and says, "Good evening, Teran. How's Loyola looking this season?" For what I saw on their roster, they're looking pretty good. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's discuss some NCAA women's volleyball. And we have quite a bit to go over from this past week. So we have to start on Wednesday as we jump into the Big 12. So the big upset that kind of happened was the upset heard from all over the world, and it was number 3 Texas that was upset, not number 4 Texas. So I'm kind of not giving Texas a whole lot of credit from their ranking, so my apologies from the intro. But number 3 Texas was upset by Kansas State in Manhattan in straight sets, 25-22, 25-22, 25-21. Kansas State was led by Aaliyah Carter, who had 20 kills. She hit 311. She kind of was the leader, as the next kill leader was Anaya Clinton, who had 7 kills, and then Izzy Silzewski and Brenna Schmidt each had 6 kills. Kansas State hit a whopping 351 as the Wildcats became only one of 2 teams to sweep Texas this year. The other one was Stanford. Texas was led by Maddie Skinner, who had 14 kills. Molly Phillips had 8 kills, while Ella Swindle and Jenna Phillips Jenna Wennis each had 7 kills. Texas hit 246 for the match. And my takeaway for Kansas State is this. I think they're starting to become a more and more dangerous team. And after last week where they just fell short of an upset against Kansas, they really impressed as they just showed up and showed out, as this was quite the packed gymnasium. This was in a house of 3,044 people. And it's quite impressive because it's their 5th ranked win over an opponent, which is the most in program history, and they snapped Texas's 39-match conference winning streak, and it's their first win over Texas since 2003. So it's been a long time coming for Kansas State. For Texas, my takeaway for them is this. Thankfully, they're so far ahead of the Big 12, but this loss doesn't really do them a whole lot of favors. Fortunately for them, they had a little bit of help from all over the league, as they weren't the only ones that were upset. Jumping on to Thursday's matchups, we had number 4 Stanford outlasting number 6 Oregon in Maples Pavilion. This was kind of the match of the week, as Stanford won the first 2 sets in quite strong fashion, 25-15 and 25-19. But then Oregon never trailed in sets 3 and 4, as they took those sets 25-20 and 25-19. Fortunately for Stanford, they had just enough in the tank to outlast the Ducks in set 5, winning 15-12. Stanford was led by Kendall Kipp and Katie Baird, both of which had 18 kills, while Baird had only 2 hitting errors, and she hit 314, which is quite nice. All in all for Stanford, it's a good win, and this win pretty much locks up the Pac-12 championship. I don't see how any team overtakes Stanford in terms of the Pac-12 conference race. I would be very shocked to see if a team were to catch up to them. And the thing about Stanford is that this was their last biggest test. Their only true test going forward is going to be against USC, and that's not really the most consistent team, even though they are undefeated at home, but that's for a little bit later. For Oregon, they were led by Morgan Lewis, who had 19 kills, while Mimi Collier had 14 kills, but she only hit 140. Lewis hit 405, while Gabby Gonzalez had 10 kills, but only hit 68. Georgia Murphy led the defense for Oregon with 18 digs, while Elena Ogaliv had 21 digs for Stanford. My takeaway for Oregon is this. It's nothing to be ashamed of if you lose to Stanford. At least you didn't lose in 4. But this one would have been so big for them. I will say this. Oregon is still a top 10 team in my opinion. Are they Can they be consistent enough to win the championship? I don't know. I really don't think they have the full-on consistency to outlast a Wisconsin or a Nebraska. Maybe a Texas. But I'd have to look at Oregon more and more as the season goes by, or in these last few weeks and in the postseason. I think Oregon is a legit team. They have the pieces, but unfortunately, this loss they just missed out on a big time win. And winning on the road, that would have been quite impressive. And for Stanford, they had 3,761 in this matchup. Many are going to say, oh, well, that's not a whole lot between the number 4 team versus the number 6 team. But it's an improvement. Would I have liked to see 5,000? Probably, but maybe but it's a school night, so even though I don't think most people would have Friday classes, but I digress. Jumping on over to Friday's matchups, and jumping back to the Big 12, we had Iowa State upsetting number 14 Kansas at home in Ames, Iowa. Iowa State wound up winning the match 25-22, 24-26, 23-25, 25-23, and fifth set was quite lopsided, 15-3. Iowa State was led by Nayeli Gonzalez, who had a whopping 31 kills. She had 344, and she had 12 digs to boot, which was quite impressive. And then Alexis Engelbrecht had 14 kills, and then Maya Duckworth and Lily Wachholz had 13 kills apiece. My takeaway for Iowa State is this. It's about time they kind of had a big win. I felt that they were kind of overdue for at least some sort of top 15 win. I want to say Iowa has a win over Baylor, but that wasn't really the most mind-blowing win, as you're about to find out a little bit later on. But I think this was the win that Iowa State needed. Now, unfortunately, Iowa State did lose the rematch to Kansas State in heartbreaking fashion, as they lost in 5 the night after, with Kansas winning the fifth set 19-17. As Kansas was led by London Davis, who had 16 kills. Aya El-Nadi had 13 kills. My takeaway for Kansas is this. I know they have a few players out due to injury, but I'll just say this isn't really the most ideal thing. They're certainly not going to catch up to Texas, that's for sure. But this loss might hurt them in terms of maybe hosting, because they came in at number 14, and now with this loss, the committee is going to say, does Kansas really deserve to host? I don't know. So Kansas is kind of on the borderline of should they be hosting or should they not be hosting in terms of regionals. I mean, and now I kind of have to reinforce this question as well. How deep can Kansas really go? Can they really go past the Sweet 16? I don't think so. I like to see Kansas go deep, and they are a very solid team. They're always well known for playing their best volleyball in the tournament. However, at this point of the season, I just don't think they can tango with the likes of Stanford or Wisconsin or Nebraska. Mikey Two Guns pops in the chat room. He says, here for my weekly volleyball fix. And then he says, what's the most kills you've ever seen in a game? I've ever seen, I honestly can't tell you. I'd probably have to say like maybe 30. And he asked for Boston College updates. Well, unfortunately, they weren't really on my radars, but I'll try to get to them maybe somewhere down the line of this recap. But I'd like to go through my updates in regards to the notable updates. Jumping over to the Pac-12 and heading down to Pullman, we had UCLA upsetting number 9 Washington State in 5 sets, 25-20, 24-26, 25-18, 25-27, and 17-15. The Bruins were led by Iman Njai, who had 21 kills, while Anna Dodson had 17 kills, Sheridan Leverett had 16 kills, and Desiree Becker added 11 kills. The Bruins hit 293, which is quite nice, as the Cougars were led by Pia Timmer, who had 22 kills, while Iman Isanovic had 14 kills, and Katie Ryan, as well as Magda Yalasheva, added 9 kills. My takeaway for UCLA is this. It's about time they actually got a meaningful win. And I'm still on the train of UCLA's making the NCAA tournament. Nobody can tell me otherwise. I know they've had a few ups and downs here and there, but I think they have the resume to make the NCAA tournament. I really think that the Bruins can make that NCAA tournament after missing it this year. And they also beat Washington, and they were so close to winning my team of the week. I really wanted to put UCLA as my team of the week, but sadly there was another team that pulled off a bigger upset than UCLA did. But I will give UCLA a lot of credit and kudos on this win. For Washington State, my takeaway is this. It's so tough to see them like this. They were looking really good early on, and then suddenly that USC loss really knocked them for a loop. Well, the Stanford loss as well, but losing to USC on the road via a reverse sweep really just dampened their spirits, and they haven't really been the same team ever since. So unfortunately for Washington State, they just don't look like the same team. And it sucks because I was really high on Washington State, and I think Washington State can at least get to the Elite Eight. My problem is, I think that's as far as they go. I don't think they're better than Wisconsin. I definitely don't think they're better than Nebraska. I don't know that they're on the level of Pitt. I just don't see how consistent they could be against some of the big dogs in the tournament. And then jumping over to some Big West action, because it's never set point without me talking about the Big West. But this was actually the bigger, more important match in the Big West, as we had UC Santa Barbara taking down Long Beach State in 4 sets at the Thunderdome, 25-18, 25-27, 25-23, and 25-19. Santa Barbara was led by Brianna McKnight, who had 14 kills, while Tasia Farmer added 11 kills. Michelle Owobite added 9 kills, as Santa Barbara only hit .234, which isn't bad, but here's the glaring stat that Long Beach State got outdone in. Serving. Santa Barbara had a whopping 12 service aces and only missed 4 serves. And even though they were outdug, Santa Barbara also outblocked Long Beach State as a team 9.5-5. When you're getting outserved and outblocked, that's where you're going to be losing more matches than not. And my takeaway for Santa Barbara is this. This was the big gut check game. This one, Hawaii and Cal Poly were their biggest gauntlet games. And they passed all 3 of those matches with flying colors. I know Long Beach State has had a great year, and I know they're down 2 of their best players, but I gotta give credit to Santa Barbara. They really outscrapped Long Beach State, especially when you have 12 service aces and are only missing 4 serves. You are really doing a great job in a match if you only miss 4 serves. For Long Beach State, they were led by Elise Agee, who had 22 kills, while Livy Narancic added 10 kills. Katie Kennedy and Cameron Bacon each had 8 kills. They actually had the same numbers in terms of hitting, as they both had 8 kills, 3 hitting errors, and 17 swings for hitting percentages of .294. My takeaway for Long Beach State is this. Look, I understand they don't have Natalie Glenn, who I think is sick. I don't know the full whereabouts of Natalie Glenn, but from what I heard, she was sick. Abby Carrick is out for the year with a foot injury that she suffered against UC Riverside a couple weeks ago. And Mara Hayes, their energy girl, is also out, most likely out for the year. But here's the thing. You have to come up big on the road. And they had the luxury. They were doing really great. I think they'd won 8 in a row prior to that loss. But I will say they're kind of in the true thick of their schedule. And Mikey Two Guns, our Boston show host of Our Bleepin' City, he asked, will Long Beach State make the tourney? That is what I'm hoping for. And I did call Long Beach State making the tournament, but if they can't get Natalie Glenn back as soon as possible, they are probably not making the tournament. Because they need her, they at least need her for the Big West Conference tournament. Because if they don't have her, then they're going to be easy pickings for the likes of Hawaii and Santa Barbara. And speaking of Long Beach State, might as well go into their next matchup, as on Saturday they played Cal Poly, and Cal Poly wound up beating Long Beach State in 4 sets, 15-25, 27-25, 27-25, and 27-25. So here's the thing for Cal Poly. This was kind of an important game because if you looked at the standings, Cal Poly was 1 game behind Long Beach State in the standings. And Cal Poly, had they lost, they would have been 2 games behind Long Beach State, and Long Beach State probably would have been on course to clinching second place in the Big West. So for Cal Poly to come up and win that game, it was a huge win for the Mustangs, because if they don't win that game, they're probably looking at 3rd, if not 4th place, which would mean they'd have to play in the opening round. Now, since they wound up winning, they are basically on the course of getting a first-round bye in the Big West Conference playoff, or Big West Conference tournament. As Tommy Stockham led the way, obviously, for the Mustangs. The win, however, did come at a cost for the Mustangs. They did lose Lizzie Markovska in I believe set number 2, but she did go down with an injury. And if you're wondering how big this injury is Lizzie Markovska is actually second on the team in kills with 351. She's kind of the Robin to Tommy Stockham, who is Batman. And if I'm hoping for Cal Poly's sake, it's not a long-term injury. If she's out just for a week, I'd rest her for UC Riverside and UC Davis. Cal Poly's already in the tournament, and even if they have to play in the first round, they'll get probably UC Irvine. If not, they'll get UC Davis, which they should probably win against. If this injury is long-term, then that is bad news for Cal Poly, and I would first and foremost, I would wish Lizzie Markovska the best, but that would just mean it would spell a lot of trouble for Cal Poly, as they would need to have other players step up, like Annabelle Falcon and Kate Slack. And my thing is, I'd be more concerned for Cal Poly, just because without Lizzie Markovska, they'd have to bank on Annabelle Falcon, because they can't just lean on Tommy Stockham to carry the team. As great as Tommy Stockham is, and as much as I called her Superwoman from that 5-set win over UC Irvine, she just can't do everything. And I don't know the injury. All I got from Tyler Hildebrand from the press conference is that she got injured in set 2. And according to the box score from the Cal Poly Long Beach State match, it happened in set 2. And she only played 2 sets. So I'm hoping it's not anything too serious. I'm not going to spectate and assume what injury it is, and I'm hoping it's not a season-ending injury, because Cal Poly needs her really badly. And my takeaway for Long Beach State is this. This was a game they needed to win. And now with this, and they definitely could have won this one. And here's the more frustrating thing about this. Tyler Hildebrand said it best in his press conference. He's mad. He's not mad because they lost, or they're not mad because they lost. They're mad at how they lost. Long Beach State actually led 24-21 in set number 4, and everyone's thinking, okay, it's probably going to go 5. And then Cal Poly rattles off 4 straight. They take a 25-24 lead. Long Beach State ties it up, but then they get 2 straight kills, and then eventually that's the match right there. And Cal Poly winds up winning in 4. And this is the type of match which could come back to haunt Long Beach State, because now they have to win their next 2 if they want to have any shot at finishing second. Because I don't know what the tiebreaker procedures are in terms of the Big West Conference thing, but I imagine maybe it's like sets between the 2, and if it boils down to head-to-head sets, then Cal Poly has that category locked up. So this was a very costly loss, and this was a loss that Long Beach State could not have afforded, especially when you're losing all 3 sets in overtime by 2, especially when that first set Long Beach State just dominated. But Tyler Hildebrand knew that his team was not going to dominate after winning by 2 points. And to close out Big West Conference play on Saturday, we had UC Santa Barbara outlasting UC San Diego in 5 sets, 28-26, 22-25, 15-25, 27-25, and 15-7. Quick takeaway from this is this. Santa Barbara, I'm a little surprised they actually had to go 5, but San Diego has nothing left to lose. UC San Diego cannot even make the Big West Conference tournament just because, well, for starters, they're still in the transition period of Division 2 to Division 1. So, sadly, I can't really say anything too happy about that, but UC San Diego won't be included in the Big West Conference tournament. So, all these matches are just basically kind of for glory and basically for momentum for next year. But for Santa Barbara, this win is very important just because that does lock up the number 1 seed in the Big West Conference tournament, and it gives them the Big West Conference regular season championship. I will say this about the Gauchos, even if they somehow lose in the Big West Conference tournament, I still think they get into the Big West or the NCAA tournament. I highly doubt they don't make the NCAA tournament. The only way they don't is if they lose both their games this week and then they lose in the semifinals. That's the only equation I see Santa Barbara not making it in terms of the NCAA tournament. But the Gauchos are having a fantastic year, and I just think that the Gauchos are a threat in terms of the NCAA tournament. And I just also got to mention that UC Santa Barbara swept the season series against Long Beach State for the first time since 2004, which is very incredible if you ask me. That's a very impressive stat, and that is, believe it or not, I was actually looking in past schedules on the Santa Barbara website, but it didn't go past 2005, so it's kind of interesting right there. But that's that for all of Saturday's matchups. Psych, y'all thought I was going to forget about these two matchups. So we had Oregon defeating Cal in 5 sets, which my takeaway for Cal is this. They're certainly not as bad as last year's team, but I will say they're just not on the level of the likes of Oregon. I was impressed that they went up 2-1 in the match, but this is Oregon we're talking about. They're not going to go 0-2, and they're certainly not going to lose to Cal. For Oregon, a win is a win, but I will just say they're certainly not Pac-12 contenders, and I just don't think Oregon can really... This goes back to my previous statement. Can Oregon really contend with the likes of Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Texas? I just don't think so. Or Louisville, for that matter. I don't think so. But the big upset on Saturday went to Penn State, number 19 Penn State, taking down Wisconsin in 4 sets at Rec Hall. 23-25, 29-27, 25-23, and 25-18. As the Nittany Lions were led by Cameron Hanna, who had 19 kills, while Jess Mrzik had 16 kills, and Zoe Wetherington added 10 kills. Penn State outdug Wisconsin 68-59. But despite Wisconsin not having Anna Smrek, Penn State was outblocked by Wisconsin 10-9, which isn't too terrible. My takeaway for Penn State is this. Considering Penn State lost 2 5-set matches last week to Nebraska and Purdue, I think they kind of needed this one. And this was kind of a breath of fresh air for Nittany Lions fans. And I have to admit, this is a great win. And this is the reason why I picked Penn State as my team of the week, because this is a big upset. Beating the number 2 team in the nation is no easy feat. And Penn State kind of remembers that Wisconsin ended their season last year in 5 sets. So to get a little bit of revenge, albeit at Rec Hall, is still quite nice. And it's their first win over a top 2 team since 2017, so I've heard. As it was September 7th, 2017. So for Penn State to pull off that big of a win is darn right impressive. For Wisconsin, they were led by Sarah Franklin, who had 19 kills, while Julia Orzel added 11 kills. I obviously know Anna Smrek, which is a major problem in terms of blocking, even though they did outblock them 10-9, but 10-9. Well, actually 11-9. Sorry, my math's a little off. 11-9. But my takeaway for Wisconsin is this. I think being the number 1 seed and winning the Big Ten Conference is now out of the question for Wisconsin. Now, that may not be a bad thing. However, I don't know if they're better than Nebraska. We'll have to find out in the final week of the season when the 2 teams play on Black Friday. But I will just say they need to get Anna Smrek back. If they can get her back, they're in good shape. But if not, then that's a whole lot. That's a big piece missing. All 6'8" worth of her. And then jumping over to Sunday's notable matches and upsets, we had number 9 Washington State outlasting number 25 USC in 5 sets in Bowler Gymnasium. So USC, I've ragged on USC quite a bit. I said that they are a terrible road team. Their only 2 notable wins are against Purdue and UCLA, which isn't bad, but that's kind of where the buck stops, as they are majorly sub 500 on the road, despite being perfect at home. But USC took the first 2 sets, 25-15 and 25-16, but Washington State took the third set, 25-16, and then the fourth set, USC actually had a nice little lead. I think they led by as many as 4. They led 22-21, but the Cougars, being the very strong and resilient team that they are, they took that fourth set, 27-25, And then set 5, the Cougars just really came alive, and they just jumped out to a 7-3 lead. It grew to 10-5, and then eventually Washington State won it 15-11. My takeaway for the Cougars is this. Imani Sanovich really stepped up, as well as Katie Ryan. In a match where Pia Timmer only had 9 kills, you needed to have other players stepping up, and I was quite impressed. The blocking was also good as they outblocked USC 13-10, even though the Cougars got outdug 67-57. But they also did out-ace USC 4-1, even though they had more service errors. But for USC to only have 1 ace is kind of concerning. And my biggest takeaway for USC is this. I don't know how you lose this matchup. You hit 338, and even though you only had 1 service ace, you had 67 digs. I just don't understand how USC finds ways to lose on the road. This is not a deep team, and they only go as far as Skylar Fields takes them. As Skylar Fields had a phenomenal game. She had 29 kills. She had 333. London Widjay added some offense as she had 18 kills. She had 368. Tyra Ariel had 9 kills. But again, when you hit 338, and while the opponent is held to 263, you're expected to win. But for USC, they just didn't. And that's the sad thing, because I think USC actually had a good shot at winning, especially coming off of a sweep over Washington. They swept Washington, albeit Washington isn't as good as they were in the past. But for USC, this is a big miss in terms of an upset. If they pull this upset off, they're most likely a guarantee to make the tournament. But for SC to lose like this, it's kind of demoralizing. And it doesn't do their confidence any good because they've got Cal and Stanford this week. Now, I'm certain they'll beat Cal, but Stanford's a whole other story. I just don't see how Stanford loses, I don't see how Stanford loses, even though USC is undefeated at Galen Center. And then the last notable matchup to go over is number 24 Auburn versus Missouri. Missouri wound up winning this matchup 19-25, 25-23, 25-19, 25-23, 23-25, and 25-12. My takeaway for Missouri is this. The Dawn Sullivan effect is really helping this team. Dawn Sullivan had a great impact on UNLV, and now she's having a great impact with Missouri. Is Missouri going to make the tournament? That all depends. I mean, they're certainly better than the last 2 seasons. It's certainly quite impressive if you ask me. As Missouri had 5 different players in double digits in terms of kills, as Jordan Iliff had 18 kills. She had 441. Janet DeMarie had 15 kills. Colleen Finney, 11 kills, 0 hitting errors while she had 733. And Delara Gedikoglu and Morgan Eisenberg each had 10 kills. So it's just a really impressive feat to see for Missouri. And for them to put up those numbers, that's just great right there. And then for Auburn, they were led by Madison Shear, who had 13 kills, while Kyla Swanson added 10 kills. My takeaway for Auburn is this. I don't think they're as good as they were back when they pulled off that win over Florida. I mean, we were all feeling good about Auburn back then, but they've lost twice to Missouri. And now I really have to reinforce this question. Is Auburn for real? I mean, I could see them winning an NCAA tournament match and maybe getting to the Sweet 16, but I think the Sweet 16 is as far as they go. And look, I like Brent Crouch. He's a great coach. He's turned that program around. But my thing for the Auburn Tigers is this. I just don't think they have the horses to keep up with everybody. So, and they were outdug 61-43, and they only had 3 blocks. That's when you know Missouri's offense had a track meet against Auburn. And by the way, speaking of kills, 65-42 in terms of kills for Missouri against Auburn. That's when you know Missouri's offense was clicking. Oh, and they also hit 356 as well. And they had 12 service aces. So Missouri just had everything going their way, and it wasn't just them playing at home in front of 3,501 fans. But you have to give it up for Dawn Sullivan. She has really reignited the Missouri program. And then some other notables to go over is that TCU beat number 20 Baylor on last Friday and last Saturday. They even reverse swept them on Saturday. My takeaway for Baylor is this. They are not a good team. Okay, maybe not a good team is a harsh way to put it, but they're certainly not the Baylor that they were back in 2019. They're just not on the level of all these other teams. I don't even know if they can get out of round one. I would not be surprised if they got one and done. They do have good key pieces. However, I just don't see them making a deep run. And then for TCU, my thing for them is this. They're such a sneaky good team. I want to give them a shot, but whenever I give them a shot, or when I say, oh, they have this sneaky good matchup against this team, and maybe they could beat this team, they always wind up pooping the bed. And they did push Texas to 5, I'll give them that, and these two wins really reinforce my thoughts about TCU being a somewhat good team. But I will say, TCU, this was definitely the wins that they needed, and I'm very happy for them. My only thing that I will say is this. I don't know if they can get ultimately far in terms of the tournament. I'm certain they'll get to the tournament. I would be shocked if this team missed the NCAA tournament. With pushing Texas to 5, and with 2 wins over Baylor, that should have more than enough reason to put the Horned Frogs into the tournament. And they have some good wins in non-conference as well against teams like Hawaii and Florida State. So I think TCU is for real, and I think teams in the Big 12 need to stop sleeping on teams like Kansas State or TCU and Iowa State, because those teams don't get a whole lot of love that I try to give them credit for. I try to give the little guys some love, if you ask me. And then another notable from the Big West, because like I said, this isn't set point without me talking some Big West Conference volleyball. UC Davis clinched a spot in the Big West Conference tournament, as it's going to boil down to just one more spot that remaining in the Big West Conference tournament. It boils down to UC Irvine and UC Riverside, but Irvine has a 2-match lead on Riverside, as Riverside did lose to, I want to say it was Cal State Bakersfield, and that was a very costly loss right there for the Highlanders. If they win that game, they're only 1 game back. But now with them having to face Cal Poly and Santa Barbara, while Irvine only has CSUN and Bakersfield, UC Riverside is going to have to hope for a miracle in order to make the NCAA tournament. And the thing is, if the tiebreaker is based on head-to-head sets, then Irvine occupies that category because they've won 4 sets to UC Riverside's 3 sets overall between the 2 sets, or between the 2 matches. And then the last other notable is that Pepperdine clinched the first automatic qualifier in the NCAA tournament, as they wound up winning the West Coast Conference outright, as they beat Santa Clara on the road on Thursday, and they beat San Diego at home on Saturday. My takeaway for San Diego regarding that is this. Or not San Diego, Pepperdine is this. Pepperdine, they're actually very underappreciated. They did not have the greatest preseason, but now they've kind of hit their strides. I know the West Coast Conference isn't as big as it was last year. I know San Diego took a major step back. LMU has kind of had a little bit of a roller coaster ride. BYU left for the Big 12. But this was Pepperdine's year. They returned a good chunk of players, and they have some notable players. They got Birdie Hendrickson. They have Meg Brown. Riley Patterson is phenomenal at the libero position. Isabella Zayala is great at the setter position. Grace Chillingworth is phenomenal at the outside hitter position. I really think Pepperdine is a sneaky good team. I would not be surprised if Pepperdine wound up winning at least 1 match in the NCAA tournament. So time will tell to see what can happen with the Waves. But for the time being, that is going to do it for the NCAA Week 12 Women's Volleyball Recap. let's go over the most recent coaches poll in the AVCA Division I Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll. So 25 through 21 consists of 25 Florida State, 24 USC, 23 Baylor, 22 Western Kentucky, 21 Houston. 20 through 16 consists of Florida at 20, Dayton at 19, Arizona State 18, Kansas 17, and Purdue 16. 15 through 11 consists of Creighton at 15, Penn State at 14, BYU at 13, Kentucky at 12, Washington State at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Arkansas at 10, Georgia Tech at 9, Tennessee at 8, Pitt at 7, and Oregon at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Texas at 5, Louisville at 4, Wisconsin at 3, Stanford at 2, and your still number one team in the AVCA Women's Volleyball Division I Coaches Poll is Nebraska. Nebraska is still undefeated, even though they kind of got a little bit of a scare from Northwestern and Illinois, but Nebraska ain't going anywhere. Come on. You thought Nebraska was going to lose to the likes of Northwestern or Illinois, and that's no knock on those programs. They tried their hardest, but Nebraska is just on a whole other level. They are like butter, on a roll. And soon, hence the word soon, Nebraska is going to be clinching the Big Ten / number one seed in the NCAA tournament. So, as you all saw in the most recent coaches poll rankings, you saw Stanford jumping up to number 2 as they jumped up 2 spots. Contrary to what I said they only went up 1 spot, but they went up 2 spots. And then Wisconsin fell from 2 to 3. Texas fell 1 spot as Louisville jumped up. Florida State has entered the top 25. Penn State has entered the top 15, and now we all have to reinforce the question. Does Penn State deserve to host? Well, for starters, Penn State is tied with Purdue for 3rd place in the Big Ten, and I kind of want to say they are. I mean, between Kansas, Purdue, and Penn State, it's a toss-up. So that's going to all depend on what the selection committee wants. So all in all, for the committee, or for the coaches poll rankings, it's going to be, that's kind of it. I mean, there wasn't really too many high risers other than Penn State. We had Tennessee go up 2 spots. We had Stanford go up 2 spots. Florida State, like I said, they entered the top 25. USC moved up a spot, even though they got reverse swept against Washington State. Like I said, USC missed out on a big chance to move up in the rankings and probably guarantee themselves a spot in the NCAA tournament. Because now, I still am 50-50 on them making the tournament. But, what can you do? All right, that's going to do it for some NCAA women's volleyball talk at the moment. So let's jump on over to some CIF Southern Section CIF State girls volleyball, as we're just going to limit it to the Open Division. So the Open Division has 16 teams, 8 from Southern California, 8 from Northern California. The tournament started on Wednesday, as in Northern California, Archbishop Mitty swept Redwood 25-12, 25-19, and 25-17. In the matchup below Archbishop Mitty and Redwood, we had Branson, quote-unquote, upsetting Sacred Heart Prep, 25-15, 25-12, and 25-18. Then in the lower bracket, we had Foothill taking down St. Mary's in 4 sets, 25-17, 23-25, 25-23, and 25-21. And then we had St. Francis sweeping St. Ignatius, 25-22, 25-18, and 25-20. Then in the regional semis in Northern California, we had Archbishop Mitty taking down Branson in 4 sets, 25-21, 25-20, 20-25, and 27-25. Then we had St. Francis taking down Foothill of Northern California, not Foothill of Santa Ana, just to not confuse anybody of that sort. It's a Foothill from Pleasanton. Anyway, St. Francis swept Foothill of Pleasanton 25-11, 25-20, and 25-19, as Archbishop Mitty and St. Francis will be facing off against one another in the regional finals tomorrow, as of this recording, at 6 p.m. at Archbishop Mitty High School. it's always a rivalry between Archbishop Mitty and St. Francis. It's going to be a barn burner. And then for the SoCal Regional Playoffs, we had Mater Dei sweeping Los Alamitos. Sadly, friend of the show Dave Huber saw the Griffins and his team fall to the Monarchs. 25-16, 25-17, and 25-17. Huntington Beach, coached by friend of the show and former set point guest Craig Pizzanti, outlasted Torrey Pines in 5 sets, 25-19, 26-24, 21-25, 19-25, and 16-14. Cathedral Catholic swept Marymount 25-20, 25-15, and 25-12. And then Miracosta took down Sierra Canyon in 4, 25-22, 18-25, 25-16, and 25-14. In the semifinals, or the SoCal Regional semifinals, Mater Dei outlasted Huntington Beach. And this was a matchup I had the honor of attending on Saturday. And this was a barn burner, as Huntington Beach gave everything and more they had against Mater Dei. I was not surprised that Mater Dei was going to have a little bit of trouble against Huntington Beach, because they have not played Huntington Beach this season. They've seen Sierra Canyon, they've seen Miracosta, but they had not seen the Oilers. And the first set, it was all Mater Dei for the most part. Mater Dei really served the ball tough, and Mater Dei seems to have a different leader in terms of kills, as Mater Dei wound up taking the first set 25-19, as Samara Gordon was just leading the way. Unfortunately for Huntington Beach, their players got off to a little bit of a slow start. Maybe it was because of pregame jitters and whatnot, but Mater Dei was serving the you-know-what out of the ball. Then set number 2, it was quite tight. It was tied at 23, and then unfortunately for Mater Dei, a service error gave the ball back to Huntington Beach, and then Huntington Beach won off of a service ace from the libero, Olivia Foy, as the Oilers took the second set 25-23. Then set number 3, it looked like it was going to be Huntington Beach kind of running away with it, but then Mater Dei rose and they led, I think it was like 23-21, but then Huntington Beach was able to outlast the Monarchs and take that big set 3, 27-25 off of a block from Kylie Leopard. But then this fourth set and then the fifth set, it was just all Mater Dei. Mater Dei really stepped on the gas, as I was saying on X when I was live tweeting the game, or live posting the game, Layli Ostavar just went into savage mode, or just carry the team mode. She was just on one in the fourth and fifth set, as Mater Dei took that fourth set 25-13, and then kind of like the Kansas-Iowa State game, Mater Dei took the fifth set 15-3, as they won off of a dump kill from Julia Kakis, the setter. So all in all, for Mater Dei, it was business as usual, though they kind of had a little bit of trouble against the Oilers. I will just say, Huntington Beach gave it their all, and players like Haley LaFontaine and Kylie Leopard, they left it all out on the court. Danny Sparks was phenomenal at setter. They just gave it their all. Unfortunately, Craig Pizzanti, the head coach, he texted me after the game because he actually had to run to the airport to go see his son in Chicago, as he was partaking in I think it was like a club volleyball tournament in Chicago, but he texted me after the game that they just ran out of gas in sets 4 and 5, and unfortunately you just cannot run out of gas against a team like Mater Dei. But from what I saw, from my numbers, Layli Ostavar led the way. She had 22 kills, I want to say, somewhere around that range, while Samara Gordon had 19, maybe 20 kills. I could just look it up on the Max Preps website, which I probably will just to confirm. But all in all, it was a great match, and I'm glad I attended this one. It was a fun one. I kind of didn't see... though they didn't post the box score. That sucks. Anyway, but Mater Dei straight up did what Mater Dei does. They just really served tough. They passed the ball well. They blocked tough. And they made the adjustments against the Oilers. And for Huntington Beach, they did all that they could, but like I said, they just ran out of gas. And now for the last matchup in terms of the SoCal Regionals, we had Cathedral Catholic upsetting Miracosta on the road, 25-22, 21-25, 26-24, and 25-22. I was a little surprised that Miracosta lost. They do have a win over Cathedral Catholic, but that was some time ago. But y'all have to remember, Cathedral Catholic, the Dons, they're the reigning national and CIF state champion in the Open Division. So this is no real surprise when it comes to seeing Cathedral Catholic pulling off the win. So I was really impressed that Cathedral Catholic pulled off that win, and it's going to be Mater Dei versus Cathedral Catholic at Mater Dei High School tomorrow in the SoCal Regional Playoffs. The final is going to be held at Santiago Canyon College, as the Open Division final will be at 6:30 p.m. this upcoming Saturday as of this recording, and I'm most likely going to be there. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see which of the 4 teams are going to be in it. If I had to guess, I'd probably say Archbishop Mitty and Mater Dei. I mean, for Archbishop Mitty St. Francis, that's kind of a toss-up just because those 2 teams are rivals. And then for Mater Dei and Cathedral Catholic, I will just say this. I think Mater Dei is... I'm not betting against Mater Dei again. I think Mater Dei is so much better now than they were back in September. Because you got to remember, back in September, they had the whole... September and then August as well. They went to Texas and then had that tournament. They weren't 100% when they played Miracosta. And I imagine they were still figuring things out in terms of their roster and whatnot. So, honestly, I don't think the September portion of Mater Dei's schedule defines them. I think now that they have everything figured out and now that they have most of their players back, healthy and ready to go, I think Mater Dei is a whole different team. And Mater Dei is my pick to come out of the SoCal regional portion. And that's not to discredit Cathedral Catholic. Cathedral Catholic has some stud players, and Juliana Kahn is a phenomenal coach. And she deserves a lot of credit, but I just think Dan Odell has his team trending in the right direction, and I am 99% certain we're going to see Mater Dei in the CIF State Open Division final at Santiago Canyon College. And that's going to do it for the high school girls volleyball portion of the show. We are going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we will talk some Pro Volleyball Federation, as well as some NCAA beach volleyball news, and we'll preview NCAA women's volleyball season, week number 13. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No. Not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, This is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, especially Chi-Town Weekly, which comes on an hour before me, primarily on a good day. But with all that said and done, let us get on into the second half of our show. So, the second half of our show consists of a little bit of Pro Volleyball Federation discussion. So, last week, we actually got a little bit of news regarding that, as they just added a new team, which I think is pretty cool. So, as for this new team, they will have reached out, and they will be heading to the Midwest, as they will be adding, can we get a drum roll, please? They have added Kansas City as a new team, who will be beginning play in 2025. So this season, they will not be playing, as this year will consist of 7 teams, which I mentioned in the previous episode. But Kansas City will have a volleyball team, a pro volleyball team, to cheer for. So it just won't be all Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Royals, Kansas City Current, Kansas Sporting KC, etc., etc. And there is some volleyball in Kansas City, as you've also got UMKC as well, as the UMKC Roos are having a great season in terms of NCAA women's volleyball. So now that Pro Volleyball Federation has added this, the sport of volleyball is going to continue to grow in Kansas City. So it's not just going to be a Kansas City Chiefs city. So there's that right there. So congratulations to Kansas City on getting a pro volleyball team from the Pro Volleyball Federation, and I'm excited for y'all. And I'm hoping we'll get to hear that on our Kansas City sports show. This is KC Sports, hosted by Bishop, every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Central. And while we're on the topic of Pro Volleyball Federation, their San Diego team actually now has released their new name. So the name of their San Diego team is, can we get another drum roll? Announced on Thursday, Pro Volleyball Federation has named their San Diego team the San Diego Mojo, which I actually, if you all remember last week's show, I actually had the team names for them being the San Diego Scorpions, the San Diego Sharks, the San Diego Sidewinders, the San Diego Diamondbacks, or the San Diego Stonefish. Well, I was certainly wrong because they're now the San Diego Mojo, and it's actually a picture of an eagle, which one of my followers said the name is lame, but the logo is A+. Now, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I mean, sure, maybe. I mean, I like it. I like the name. I think San Diego Mojo is pretty solid. And the logo does look pretty cool if you ask me. So, could they have named it something a little bit more regarding the whatchamacallit? Regarding the logo? Maybe. But I think San Diego Mojo is totally fine. Also, I have to give a shout out to Mo Padios, who is in the chat room. Thank you for tuning in. And if I haven't acknowledged the other chat room members, Mikey Two Guns, Davidson Crooks, one of the hosts of Fast Break on IE Sports Radio, and then It's Drewski said he's going live on Twitter and that he will catch up on the show later. And I did actually update y'all on TCU. So then Mikey Two Guns was in the chat room earlier, and Adam Cronk was in the chat room, as well as Larry B. So that is that for Pro Volleyball Federation right there. And soon we're going to be getting some Pro Volleyball Federation gameplay as January of 2024 is right around the corner. And also, San Diego Mojo will be playing its matches at San Diego State University. So there's that little bit of news right there from the pro volleyball scene. All right, now let's move on to some NCAA beach volleyball news. And there's quite a bit of news right there, if you ask me. So next year, as we all know, the Pac-12 is disbanding as USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are heading off to the Big Ten. And then Stanford and Cal are going to the ACC. And then Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State are heading off to the Big 12. That kind of bodes a problem when it comes to Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA, because there's only one Big Ten team in terms of beach volleyball, and that's Nebraska, and they're still trying to get their season off the ground. But it was announced on Wednesday, it was Thursday, November 9th. It was announced Thursday, November 9th, that the MPSF is going to be adding beach volleyball, which is a record-setting 12th sport, which is awesome. So the MPSF will be as follows for beach volleyball: Cal, Grand Canyon, Oregon, Stanford, UCLA, USC, and Washington, which, excluding Grand Canyon, those teams are heading for their final year in the Pac-12. And then Grand Canyon is not with the Pac-12. I think they're still in the 2CSA conference. Yes, the Coastal Collegiate Sports Association, which competed as an independent team in the first 10 years before moving to the 2CSA. But that's pretty cool that the MPSF is adding beach volleyball, and it's their 12th sport, so I like it. And the ACC doesn't really have any beach volleyball teams, to my knowledge, which it is unfortunate, but it's all good. I mean, you have Florida State, but they're also still in the 2CSA as well. So there's that bit of news right there. And in regards to beach volleyball, the Big 12 is also adding beach volleyball, as this news was also announced on the same day as the MPSF adding those Pac-12 teams in Cal, Stanford, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. As the Big 12 has added beach volleyball, as the teams will feature none other than Arizona, Arizona State, TCU, and Utah. Now, I kind of wonder, is Texas going to be a part of that, or are they kind of already there? Like, I'm a little confused, but it is what it is. I mean, I would hate to see Texas as an independent because they're actually growing. They've got some good players that have flipped their commitments. And then they've got some players that are transferring to Texas as well. So Texas beach volleyball could be on the rise, especially since they have they just recently poached the coach from well, not poached. That's kind of a derogatory word right there. But the former UCLA coach is now at Texas, which I think is pretty darn cool if you ask me. And that's going to bring in a lot of recruits. Is it Steinmetzger? I was blanking on the name, but I didn't want to assume. So Steinmetzger is at Texas for beach volleyball, and that's pretty awesome if you ask me. And what's really cool is that it's not just going to be Texas indoor players playing beach. It's going to be more primary beach volleyball players playing beach volleyball at Texas. So I still kind of have to wonder, is Texas going to be in the Big 12 or if they're going to be independent? Or are they just going to be in the 2CSA? It's just food for thought right there. But as we all know, TCU had a phenomenal year last year as they straight up made it all the way to the semifinals, wound up losing to the eventual champion USC. So all in all for TCU, I imagine they'll be running that conference with an iron fist. So time will tell. All right, but that is going to do it for the NCAA beach volleyball portion of the show. So Adam Karnick actually popped into the chat room earlier, and he actually was wondering about how's Loyola looking for the season. So I basically told him they should be good from what I'm seeing, and honestly, I think they're still going to have a great year. I mean, they've loaded up on recruits, and they should be leading the MIVA with an iron fist. The only competition I think they'll get is probably Ball State and Ohio State. Now, for me, I think Loyola just needs to actually win when it truly matters, a.k.a. the MIVA tournament. Because if they win that MIVA tournament, or if they get to the final, I think they could even make the NCAA tournament. But unfortunately, they lost in the first round to McKendree, which was completely unacceptable. And unfortunately for Loyola, they wound up wasting an opportunity to clinch the... I think they actually had a shot at winning the MIVA regular season championship and getting the number 1 seed. But they just released their schedule, as Adam actually did interlude this on his show. So Loyola actually kicks off their season on the road against, believe it or not, Hawaii of all teams. They start the season on January 3rd, which that's going to be on a Wednesday. I'm guessing that's going to be the first match of the NCAA men's volleyball season for all teams, not just for like Division 3 and whatnot, but I think it's for like Division 1 and 2. So there's that. So Loyola plays Hawaii on the 3rd and the 5th, and then they also travel to Stanford on the 7th and the 8th. So that's quite the road trip right there. Their first 4 matches at Hawaii and at Stanford. Their first home match will be on January 11th after their 2-match roadie against Stanford, as they would host BYU on January 11th. And then 2 days after that, Loyola welcomes the reigning champion, UCLA. Now, UCLA, here's the thing about UCLA. John Hawks actually holds that team kind of near and dear to his heart because he was actually an assistant coach for UCLA men's volleyball. But now UCLA is coming over to Chicago, and it should be a nice little matchup right there. As I think that could be the headlining match for that night. So time will tell. So after they play UCLA, Loyola will host Kentucky State, which I imagine is still in its infancy stages. And that's going to be 6 days after they play UCLA. And then January 20th, a Saturday, Loyola will be hosting Merrimack. And then January 26th, also Friday, Loyola will be hosting LIU Brooklyn. And then the day after that, Loyola will be hosting George Mason. Then Loyola kicks off MIVA play, or Midwest Interscholastic Volleyball Association playoff, on February 1st, a Thursday, at Ball State in Muncie. And then on Tuesday, February 6th, Loyola plays at Purdue Fort Wayne. So it's kind of a little bit of a road trip to Indiana. But then on February 9th, a Friday, Loyola hosts Ohio State. Then on Wednesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, Loyola will be on the road in Romeoville to take on Lewis. Then February 17th, a Saturday, Loyola will host Ball State in round 2 of that matchup. And then Loyola hits the road to St. Charles, Missouri to take on Lindenwood on Friday and Saturday of February 23rd and 24th at Lindenwood. And then February 29th, a Thursday, Loyola hosts Purdue Fort Wayne. Saturday, March 2nd, Loyola is at Ohio State. Then Loyola takes a little bit of a break from MIVA play or MIVA play as Loyola hosts Princeton on March 11th on a Monday. Kind of an interesting matchup right there. Then on Thursday, March 14th, Loyola will host Chicago in a little bit of an Illinois versus Illinois matchup right there. Then Saturday, March 16th, Loyola hosts McKendree, which is another one of those Illinois versus Illinois matchups. And then on Thursday, March 21st, Loyola hits the road to Quincy to take on Quincy. And then Saturday, March 23rd, Loyola hits the road to Lebanon to take on McKendree. And then a new opponent in the MIVA is on Loyola's schedule, as Loyola will be hosting Queens on Thursday, March 28th and Saturday, March 30th, which I think is pretty cool right there. And honestly, I think it's great to see a new team in the MIVA, and this team is actually originally from the ASUN conference. So if you're wondering, there is no ASUN in men's volleyball. So that's kind of the reason why Loyola primarily is in the ASUN and more of the other conferences. And then lastly, to close out the regular season, Loyola hosts Lewis on Saturday, April 6th, which I think is going to be a great matchup. It all depends on what Lewis has in store for us, but you never want to underestimate the Lewis versus Loyola rivalry. Then the MIVA tournament is going to be on Saturday, starts on Saturday, April 13th, which is the quarterfinals. Then Thursday, April 18th is the semifinals, and then Saturday, April 20th is the finals, which I think is pretty cool. So that's that for Loyola's schedule, and I really think Loyola has some stud players on their team. And they've got some stud freshmen on their team, such as Jake Reed, JJ Sawa, Charlie Ledford. I know their stud player in Jake Reed. He is a beast. But Loyola also has Parker Van Buren, who is a phenomenal. Cole Schobel, I would not be surprised if he's set. Nicodemus Meyer also is pretty good as well. Dan Mangun currently is the setter for them, but I could see him just being phenomenal. Lucas Anderson, if you know Lucas Anderson, you probably know who his mother is. It's Anne Marie Anderson, who does, I think, color commentary for like UCLA matches. And if you don't know who Anne Marie Anderson is, you better know. So Lucas Anderson, I could see as another impact player for Loyola in the near future. So, and then they also got Liam Finizzi, who is a young stud as well. So I'm just going to also say this. John Hawks really knows how to recruit from California, and that is crucial right there. Because if you could recruit from not only the Midwest, but from the West Coast as well, you've got your bases loaded, and you could, hence the word could, be loading up on lots of talent. Because I don't say this in a biased way just because I live in California, but I really think men's volleyball can be a hotbed in Southern California. But that is my little synopsis on Loyola men's volleyball. I'm going to have a much deeper dive on what they're going to be like come the NCAA men's volleyball season, probably somewhere near the end of the year. But I can't wait to see what they could bring to the table. I think they do have a solid roster, but obviously last year they lost. I'm blanking on the name because it's not NCAA men's volleyball season. They obviously returned Parker Van Buren, but I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, Parker Van Buren is the player to watch for, but I'll get more into the X's and O's of NCAA men's volleyball when that time comes. But anyway, that is going to do it for some NCAA men's volleyball discussion. Now let's get on into some NCAA women's volleyball preview of Week 13, and then I'll send you all on your way. All right, so the really good matchups to watch for start on Tuesday, and I know y'all are going to pull your hair out on this, but bear with me. Long Beach State at UC San Diego. It's a semi-sneaky good matchup. Probably the best matchup you'll see on Tuesday. So the reason why I think this is a good matchup is because UC San Diego is actually playing good volleyball as of late. And they nearly took down UC Santa Barbara. Now they get a chance to face Long Beach State. And here's the thing. Long Beach State, they're not sure if they're going to have Natalie Glenn for this matchup. If they have Natalie Glenn, they definitely have a shot. But if they don't, then it's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb, especially with what happened against UC Santa Barbara and Cal Poly. So all in all, for Long Beach State, they really have to win this one. If they win this one, then they'll have the momentum going into Saturday's matchup against Hawaii. If they lose this matchup, that could wind up being the thing that costs them big time. Because they swept UC San Diego in the first meeting. However, this is a totally different story right here. UC San Diego is playing with so much more passion. And heck, they're not even going to the postseason. Remember, they're in the Division II to Division I transition. They can't make any postseasons. No Big West Conference tournament, no NIVC, no NCAA tournament, nothing. This is UC San Diego's last week of volleyball. So they want to go out with a bang and not with a whimper. So Long Beach State really has to be careful here. They really need a big game from Elisa Gee, Katie Kennedy. Hannah Lisiak is someone I really hope steps up, because if she doesn't, then I don't know if Long Beach State can win this one. If I were a gambling man, I would put my money on Long Beach State, but do not be surprised if UC San Diego forces them to sweat it out. Then jumping over to Wednesday, we have a plethora of Big 12 matchups, starting with number 23 Baylor at number 17 Kansas. Well, if Kansas wants to still be in the contention of hosting at least a regional matchup or in the regionals, I would suggest winning this matchup. If they lose, this is a big week for Kansas, as they also hit the road to face BYU on Friday, and I think they play them on Saturday as well. So for Kansas, this is probably the biggest week for them. If they go a perfect 3-0, then boy howdy, I think they definitely deserve to host, especially when they're beating BYU on the road. That would be no easy feat right there, because BYU is so strong at BYU. Actually, no, they're not playing on Saturday. They don't play BYU another time. It's just one time. So it's just Baylor and BYU for Kansas. But Kansas has to get past Baylor first. If Kansas gets past Baylor, then there's no doubt in my mind Kansas should host in NCAA Regional. If Baylor wins this, then first and foremost, we're going to see who's the actual contender, semi-contender from the Big 12, and who's the team that I think can maybe go no farther than round 2. For Baylor, I just have so many doubts about them in this matchup, but I will say this is kind of the get-right game for them. They came so close to beating Texas at Texas. Didn't do that. They've had a few ups and downs in the season. This is kind of their chance to right the ship. Then we have another semi-sneaky good matchup. Iowa State at number 5 Texas. All right, well, hear me out on this one. In recognition of, I forgot that Kansas State played Texas, and for me ignoring that matchup, I'm going to shine some light on Iowa State versus Texas. Here's my thing. Iowa State beat Texas last year, but that was in Amy's, Iowa. Do I think they have a shot at Texas at the Gregory Gymnasium? Probably not. But don't be surprised if Iowa State challenges Texas. I think Texas is going to win this one. They kind of need a little bit of a get-right game. I don't think they're bad by any means. I don't think that loss was bad. I think that was just more of Kansas State just winning the close sets that they need to. And another thing for Texas is they can't afford to get off to such a slow start. They always seem to struggle in set ones more often than not. So all in all, for Texas, get off to a fast start in set one, set the tone, and then you should win this one fairly easily. But do not sleep on Iowa State. They have some stud players. And then we have a sneaky good matchup here on Wednesday. TCU at number 21, Houston. All right, this is a nice little matchup. I forget what the freeway this is. I think this is like an I-45 matchup, but for Texas right here, or for TCU right here, as they take on Houston. My man Drewski is the one is the Texas guru. So for TCU, I would not be surprised if they beat Houston. Houston hasn't really had anything jump out to me saying, oh my god, Houston looks like such a threat. I mean, yes, they had the big standout play where the libero, Kate Georgiadis, just went Bills Mafia on that table to save the ball. If you know what I mean by Bills Mafia, then you know what I mean. But for Houston this year, they have good players. I really think that Houston has a good foundation of a roster. They just have to be careful with TCU. I think TCU is more than capable of pulling off an upset. And this isn't going to be traveling across the country. They're just going to Houston. They're going down I-45 to take on the Houston Cougars. Now let's jump on over to Friday's matchups. We have a semi-sneaky good matchup right here. Number 2, Stanford at UCLA. All right, hear me out on this one. UCLA's last week in terms of playing at Pauley Pavilion. They want to send their seniors off with at least 1, if not 2 wins. If they can beat Stanford, that could probably get them into the tournament for sure. Being Washington State is one thing, but if you can beat Stanford, let's talk UCLA into the tournament. I really think UCLA has some sort of chance, because even though they lost a few players to the transfer portal and to graduation, you still have to remember they have the Anna Dodson. They have Desiree Becker. They have Iman Injai. They have Sheridan Leverett. The list goes on and on. This team is it. This team has that it factor. My question is, can they do it against a really talented Stanford team? That would be the biggest feather in the cap for UCLA. And they've won 5 out of their last 6, so UCLA is riding high with momentum, so don't be surprised if the Bruins do manage to win this one. Or at least challenge Stanford. And then Friday, we also have number 3, Wisconsin at number 16, Purdue. All right, Wisconsin, here's my thing. You don't have Anna Smrek, so I understand. You're not the Wisconsin that everyone was raving about. But you still have other talented players. Now you have to go to Lafayette to take on Purdue. And my thing for Purdue is this. They've had 2 consistent weeks in a row. 2. You want to know what follows that up in terms of Purdue and its consistency? A not-so-consistent week. Now, inconsistent would be a terrible word to use, but it seems like Purdue has this up and down week where they just can't really string together too many wins all together in one week. But I should expect Wisconsin to win, but do not be surprised if Chloe Chicoine and Eva Hudson and Raven Colvin and Lourdes Myers just straight up go off. I really think Purdue has a chance in this one, but they have to be consistent Purdue, not inconsistent Purdue. Next up, going back to the Pac-12, is number 6 Oregon at number 18 Arizona State. Well, it's another ranked matchup for the Ducks, as this time they're heading to Tempe to take on Arizona State. Now, the first meeting the Sun Devils actually wound up winning this one in straight sets. Imagine what a win could do against the Ducks yet again. Could Arizona State be in line to host in the regionals? That remains to be seen. And that is another team that I could add to the whole, could this team host regionals, along with Penn State, Kansas, and Purdue. Arizona State, can they pull off this upset, and would they be able to host regionals? That is still the deciding factor. This win would definitely get them closer, to say the least. As long as they don't follow it up with a loss against Oregon State. For Arizona State, they just have to win the games that they're supposed to. If they find a way to lose to the teams that they're not supposed to lose to, then that's going to make the committee's job a whole lot easier on putting them in the top 16 or not. Next up, we jump on over to the ACC and talk a little ACC volleyball, as we have a sneaky good matchup right here. Number 9 Georgia Tech at Miami. So you're probably wondering, well, didn't Miami just lose to Florida State? Yes. However, Miami did beat Georgia Tech the first go-around in O'Keefe Gymnasium. Don't be surprised if those Hurricanes find a way to make Georgia Tech make their lives a little bit miserable. But I think Georgia Tech needs to bounce back in this one. They can't afford to fall too far behind, especially since Pitt and Louisville face one another on Saturday, which I think that's the match of the week right there, but more on that later. But for Georgia Tech, if they want to have any sort of hope of clinching the AQ from the ACC, they have to win out, and they have to get a little bit of help along the way. But for Louisville, or not for Georgia Tech, they should win, but do not count out Miami. I think Miami can win this one. I wouldn't say with ease, but they could still win this one. And as I mentioned this earlier in my previews, number 17 Kansas at number 13 BYU. All right, here's my thing with this matchup. BYU is so great at home. They're so great at Smith Fieldhouse. If Kansas beats BYU, then I kind of have to put them back in the conversation of should they host regionals. If they lose this matchup, then I don't know. I think for me, BYU is kind of on the borderline of should they host and should they not. I think for the time being, BYU is proving that they can host and they deserve to host, but they can go as far as they remain in Smith Fieldhouse. I think BYU is a solid team, yes, but outside of Smith Fieldhouse, they're kind of a whole different team. But I think BYU should win this one, but don't count out Kansas. Kansas, even though they're banged up, I think they still have some firepower within them. And to close out Friday's notable matchups, I know y'all are going to probably pull your hair out at this, but UC San Diego at Hawaii is a semi-sneaky good matchup for me. Again, this is UC San Diego's final match of the regular season. After this, it's off-season for them because of the whole Division II to Division I transition rule. They obviously wanted to go out on a high note, and what better way to do it than to play Hawaii, one of the juggernauts in the Big West Conference. Again, you got to remember, UC San Diego almost beat UC Santa Barbara. I'm certain Hawaii's going to win because they know what's at stake, and they know instead of playing on Wednesday, they would get a bye into the semifinals, and that would be so much more luxurious for them because they have to travel from Hawaii to Long Beach. But whereas if they play in the quarterfinals, they'd have to travel from Hawaii to Long Beach in a short amount of days. But I'm certain they'll get in to see the quarterfinals, to scout to see what is to be in terms of the quarterfinalists of the 3 versus 6 versus the 4 versus 5. But for UC San Diego, this is kind of the final hurrah for their seniors and for their season. So I expect them to basically give it their all. If they play like they have been, I would not be surprised if they were to pull off this win. But it's going to take a lot because Amber Igidi, Riley Wagner, Kate Lang, the list goes on and on in terms of really good players that Hawaii has, they are going to be ready. And honestly, I will just say this. Hawaii, I know they had the 2 losses against Cal Poly and UC Santa Barbara, but I think now that they've gotten those losses out of the way, I think they can go as far as they want to go. And they know that they don't want to lose 2 straight in front of their home fans to close out the season, especially since it's senior night on their final game of the season. Then on Saturday, we have number 4 Louisville at number 7 Pitt. That is my match of the week right there. No doubt about it. All right, this is probably the battle for the ACC crown, unless Florida State plays Louisville, which, if that is the case, then put my money on, Then put my money on Louisville, if you ask me. But for Louisville-Pitt, this is going to be the matchup that decides who probably wins the ACC and who's probably not going to win the ACC. I can't really predict this matchup. I think this could go either way when it comes to the Noles and the Panthers. Or not the Noles and the Panthers and the Cardinals. I really think Louisville is still playing great, even though they've had a few hiccups. For Pitt, obviously, they are coming off of that amazing win over Georgia Tech. But it's all about consistency against Louisville. And this time, it's going to be at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. At least I would hope it's at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse and not the smaller gymnasium, but I digress. So, this is definitely a matchup to watch for. And no, Florida State does not host, they don't play Louisville anymore. So, but here's the thing. Louisville has the tiebreaker over Florida State in terms of head-to-head. So, yeah. If Louisville wins this matchup, I'm 95% certain they won't be losing anytime soon. So, for Louisville, they just have to play their game. But honestly, for Pitt, they got to have production from Valeria Vasquez-Gomez, Olivia Babcock. Rachel Fairbanks is going to have to do a little bit of everything, but I'm certain she can. Chiamaka Nwokolo is going to have to do her thing as well. So all in all for Pitt, it's going to have to be a near perfect game because against Louisville, they have a lot of firepower. And then on Saturday, this is probably the what's the word? Premultimate? It's the biggest game of the Big West Conference. Long Beach State at Hawaii. It's a sneaky good matchup otherwise, but it's a very darn good game nonetheless, as this is the biggest game for Long Beach State and for Hawaii. So let's say Hawaii and Long Beach State win their matchups, and then they're both tied for second place. We're not going to factor Cal Poly into this just because reasons, but this is probably for second place, if not maybe third. And if you get third, it's kind of not too big of a deal, but UC Irvine is probably going to be that sixth and final team unless they win out and then Davis loses out and then Davis is that sixth seed, but I digress on that. But Long Beach State, Hawaii, here's the thing. It's been a while since we've addressed Long Beach State, Hawaii. The last time these two teams played, Hawaii got swept by Long Beach State at the Pyramid. Now, Hawaii is the home team, and I am 99% certain we're going to get 7,500 plus fans there. I'm 95% certain we're going to get, at the Stans Sheriff Center, at least 7,500. I would be shocked if there was anything below that number. But this is the last home game for Hawaii in terms of the regular season. I really don't see Hawaii hosting. I'd be very surprised if Hawaii got to host a regional. They're not even remotely close to hosting. No offense to Hawaii, but for Hawaii, they obviously know what to expect now. And for Long Beach State, they really need Natalie Glenn as soon as possible. If they can get Natalie Glenn, then honestly, they may have a shot. But without Abby Carrick, I just don't know if they have the same feel. But Natalie Glenn, I want to tell you how important she is. Her jump serving is like none that anyone's ever seen. And Tyler Hildebrand has mentioned this in his press conferences, weekly press conferences, that with Natalie Glenn, she's one of the better opposites in the conference, maybe one of the best opposites in the Big West Conference. I mean, everyone has their own opinion, but he says it's Natalie Glenn, most likely unbiased. She's at least top 3 in my opinion, and I'm not just saying that because I go to the matches and spectate and I cover it and whatnot. But I will just say this: with Natalie Glenn, Long Beach State has a shot. Without her, I could see Hawaii winning this one. And one of the reasons, you want to know how much Long Beach State misses Abby Carrick and Natalie Glenn? In transition, Long Beach State has hit over 390. This week, without Abby Carrick and Natalie Glenn, Long Beach State has hit under 100 in transition. So they need Natalie Glenn back in the worst way. It sucks that they lost Abby Carrick, and I wish her well. But with Natalie Glenn back, as she did practice today, I did get confirmation on that. She should hopefully be back in time for the last 2 matches, if not at least for the Hawaii match. And then for Sunday's matchups, we have number 2 Stanford at number 24 USC. I'm going to try to go to this matchup, by the way. It all depends on what happens that Sunday. But for Stanford, here's my thing. Stanford is the number 2 team in the nation, but they're facing a team that's undefeated at home. Something's got to give here. And for USC, obviously they have the 5-set reverse sweep over Washington State, but they also got reverse swept by Washington State. And they also have a win over Purdue, and 2 wins over Washington, and a win over UCLA, and a win over Arizona State. USC has a lot of success at home, but this is the big test right here. Can they beat Stanford at the Galen Center? I want to say it's doable, but Stanford just has so much firepower. And this is Kendall Kipp's possible last return trip to playing in Southern California. And then after that, she basically is going to be playing overseas. I can confirm that. And if you do remember, Kendall Kipp did play her volleyball. She did play prep volleyball, or her volleyball days in high school, at Corona Del Mar. And I got to see that in action. And she was phenomenal under the previous coach, Steve Astor, who was a former guest on Set Point. But don't be surprised if Kendall Kipp goes off, as well as Aaliyah Rubin. It's kind of a little bit of a homecoming for her as well. But I'll see if I will go to that matchup. I would like to go to that matchup, but time will tell. If I can get that sorted out, then maybe. But no promises will be made. And then the last matchup to watch for in Week 13 is number 20 Florida at number 10 Arkansas. All right, if Arkansas wants to have any sort of hope of winning the SEC, they kind of got to run the table, and it kind of starts with this matchup. Florida still has pride and glory to play for, and I can still see them making the NCAA tournament. Obviously, not having Anna Dixon, Kira Hudson, and Alexis Stuckey really hurts them, but I will say, I still think Florida still poses a threat. Remember, Kennedy Martin is a freaking beast, and she is probably the front runner for SEC Freshman of the Year. She and Brooklyn, oh goodness, I'm blank. It's a funky last name that I always pronounce. Brooklyn DeLay, I'm sorry. Brooklyn DeLay of Kentucky. My apologies, Kentucky fans. But Kennedy Martin, I think, is going to go do her best to try to will that team to victory. But for Arkansas, this is if they win this matchup, they could, hence the word could, still be in line to host the regionals. So it's a big matchup for Arkansas. It's a much big matchup for them. And a huge mistake for Arkansas would be looking ahead to next week's matchup against Kentucky, because it's so tempting to look at that matchup and say, oh, we're playing Kentucky on Wednesday. You got to get past Florida first. Once you get past Florida, then you can look at Kentucky and Auburn. But for the time being, you got a Gator team to take down, and that Gator team has a lot has a lot to play for, but they don't have much to lose. And then you could look at Kentucky, which you get to host. And it's also the senior day for Florida, the senior day for Arkansas against Florida. So, God, who has senior day against Florida initially? Anyway, but that's going to do it for my matchups to watch for in week number 13 of the NCAA women's volleyball season. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is that time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to Mo Padios and his daughter, who was listening in the chat room. Mikey Two Guns, Davidson Crooks, It's Drewski, Larry B, and Adam Kark for also popping into the chat room. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in live. This Friday, I might not be live for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. It all depends. I don't want to take this week off just because next week is Thanksgiving, and I'd hate to miss the SoCal Supreme Sports Show that week as well. I just hate missing 2 weeks in a row. But I can assure you that Set Point will be back next Monday, most likely at its original time. It all depends. And definitely keep an eye out for me at the Big West Conference Tournament. So, for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. We only have 2 more weeks of the NCAA women's volleyball season. I will see you all tomorrow at Mater Dei High School for Mater Dei versus Cathedral Catholic in the SoCal Regional Finals of the CIF State Open Division playoffs. Have a great night, everybody. Peace!